Gabriela on the scene today with Talk Network Radio. We have a real treat for you just around the corner, and that is Empowered Living with Jeff Byrd. Jeff is the owner of Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and he will be coming to you weekly to teach you more about empowered living.
Hello and welcome. This is Jeff Byrd with Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and this is Empowered Living with Jeff Byrd. Our topic today is one that I think every single person listening is going to resonate with and give a hearty yes to. And the topic is say yes to the rest. And what I mean is not the rest of what I'm going to say, but a rest for your mind, for your emotions, for your body, for your spirit, for everything in us needs a rest. So many people in the world need a rest. This year, many people have contacted me and asked me, so hey, how can you talk about self-care to us? Can you bring that to us? Can you help us enter into self-care? And because that's what we need. And some of them have said, hey, we know we need development. We know we've got things to deal with. We know we've got things to fix. But right now we're exhausted. We're exhausted, and we need to take care of ourselves and to get back on track, because right now, guess what? We're scraping the bottom of the barrel, and we don't have what we need to keep going, to develop. Our attention span is shot. Our concentration is shot. They say that the average goldfish has an attention span of 12 seconds, and that in this environment and world that we live in, the average person has an attention span of 8 seconds. The video games, the constant news, the constant media, 24/7 coming at us through what we call smartphones, and I'm really not so sure about that, and through all our devices. It's supposed to make life easier by having all this access, but what it's done to a large degree, it has made it easier in some ways, but it also has made it more overwhelming. And we just want a break. I was just telling my wife today, I said, I know what I should be doing is studying this new coursework for these things I'm taking and trying to help other people with. But what I really want to do is just go away. I just want to get away. I just want to leave it all. I just want to be done for a minute or for a month, But that's kind of where we find ourselves. And now there is some help for us. But we've got to realize, first of all, that, hey, none of us are Superman or Superwoman. That's a myth. That's a legend. That doesn't exist. The toughest people get old. They burn out. They break down. Our brains need time to recover from all the stress in the world. Our hearts need time to be filled with beauty and to strain out issues. Our bodies need time to recover. Our spirits need to soak in the love and the beauty and the acceptance that they were made for. We can't live without these things. We just can't be on all the time, as so many people have been forced to do during these last days. And now, with the resurgence of some of the COVID, I had a friend just this week that told me, hey, I've been fully vaccinated and now I've tested positive for COVID. I just took vacation and I got all this work to do and now I've tested positive and I'm just so mad. And that's how it is sometimes. Things don't go the way we expect. Just today, my wife and I had several things that didn't go the way we expected. It was some disappointing news on top of some disappointing news. And I'm like, something good's going to come out of this, but it's time to just not pay attention to these messages and to the news, to the we need to develop the anti-negative thinking. Dr. Daniel Amen in the brain health coaching course that I'm taking, he calls them ants, how to kill the ants. And we need to kill the ants and come up with anti-negative thinking, which of course spells ants if you do it as an acronym. So we need to figure out ways to do that. And here, I just want to give a few tips today. This is just scraping the tip of the iceberg, but boy, these are things we need. Gratitude. I was just listening to Dr. Amen again talk about gratitude, and he's the one that invented the SPECT scans so they can see the blood flow to the different areas of the brain, so they know which areas of the brain are really working the best and most active. And he said that he brought in this woman and scanned her when she was just thinking about how grateful she was for her life and for all the things in her life. And when he did that scan, the cerebellum, which is it's this very interesting, smooth part that's very small, and it's on the back of the brain. It's kind of, if you put your hand on the back of your neck, the cerebellum's kind of right up in there. Behind that, just where your head attaches to the upper neck there. That's kind of where it is, and it looks different. The cerebrum is the one that looks like a brain. It looks like the brain coral and the other things, that walnuts and things like that. But the cerebellum is the small part of the brain, the smooth part, and it has elongated ridges on it, and it looks very different. And it's only 10% of the brain's mass, but it houses 50% of the brain's neurons. 50% of the brain's neurons and 10% of the brain's mass. That's impressive. And when he took this SPECT scan while she was thinking about gratitude for her life and the various things in her life, that part of her brain was lit up like a Christmas tree. That thing was bright. It was active. It was glowing. And it's like, wow, she has all these neurons that are working. And then he finally talked her into it. She didn't want to do it, but he finally talked her into it, and doing a SPECT scan when she was thinking fearful thoughts, thinking about things that could go wrong. And boy, in this world today, it is not hard to think about things that could go wrong. We can get fixated on it. We can get depressed. We can become addicted to escaping from it. All kinds of things can go wrong when we're thinking that way. And so he finally talked her into it. She did the SPECT scan, just thinking, dwelling, meditating, kind of, if you will, on these fearful thoughts. And when he did the SPECT scan, it showed no activity from the cerebellum. She had just lost 50% of her brain's capacity by losing the activity of those neurons. There was no activity that showed up there. And I thought, wow, that is just so amazing when we're allowing fear to dominate. When we're allowing fear to dominate, we lose so much of the capacity that we so much need to make good decisions, to be more creative, to be more joyful, to have better attitudes, to have better relationships. We're losing that. And so gratitude can really help us with that. Some really great advice that he gave, and this is not new, but he said, think of and dwell on 3 things that you're grateful for every day. I've got a friend now, and she said years and years and years ago, when she was much younger, I think she was in her 30s, she kind of had a bad attitude, and she was always fault finding and just kind of negative about everything. And she said that she had an older friend who came along and said, "Hey, I want you to get on your knees and name 5 things that you're grateful for every night before you get into bed." And her response was, "I don't have 5 things to be grateful for. I've got a marriage that's going south. I've got a son that's addicted. I don't have 5 things to be grateful for." And this friend told her, "Hey, if you can't think of 5 things, I'm going to call you at the time I know you go to bed, and I'm going to give you 5 things to be grateful for." And that's exactly what the friend did. Now, that didn't last long, because eventually this friend that I have, she caught on to it. And she's like, "Yeah, I actually do have things to be grateful for." And this is going on 50 years later. She said, "I still do that every night. I get on my knees before I crawl into the bed, and I name 5 things that I'm grateful for." And she said, "I practiced that all my life, ever since this other friend told me that." And what a difference that makes when we're not just looking at problems, when we're not trying to be fortune tellers and imagine the negative things that could happen, or not trying to read other people's minds and imagine that they're always thinking the worst. And there's so many ways of thinking negatively that we can do, but we want to get rid of those, and we want to bring in the gratitude. Gratitude really does break the back of the mood monster. I don't think we can be in a state of gratitude and in a state of anger or fear at the same time. That's just my thought. I don't think the brain is capable of holding those 2 emotions at the same, and those 2 beliefs at the same time. So another thing, I've talked about this before, but I want to bring it up again because boy, does it come up a lot in the life. It bears repeating, and that is the topic of benevolent detachment. And I remember Jim Rohn saying, he's saying, if everything is important, then nothing is. And there are so many needs in this world, and especially if you're a caregiving person, if you've tried to be loved, this is something I'm talking about on the radio this Saturday, but if your love hunger requires that you go out and try to meet needs so people will appreciate you and love you, then it's really bad. Caregivers could easily fall into this. Any of us can fall into it, but we see these needs and we're like, oh my goodness, I need to meet those needs. No, you don't need to meet every one of those needs. You don't need to meet the vast majority of those needs. Now you can have a benevolent detachment. Sometimes as a person of faith, I pray over them and I'm like, hey, these problems are all yours, God. You just give me back in peace the things that I need, the people I need to go help, and the things that I can do. But let me not be overwhelmed, because I've been there. I've gone there in my life before, overwhelmed by the needs around me, and I don't want to go there again. So benevolent detachment, that's just stepping back. It doesn't mean we don't care, but it means we can't care about everything all the time without wiping ourselves out and without coming to a state of burnout. The next thing, so those were, if you're tracking along, that's on the mental and spiritual and emotional. The next is on the physical, and that is we need downtime. We need to step away from all the duties and responsibility. We need to take in the beauty around us. Maybe it's on a walk. My wife and I were just watching a YouTube last night by Dr. Byrd, and he was talking about if you just walk in a pine woods or a spruce woods, all of these chemicals that are given off by the trees that are really good for us. And I'm like, wow, who knew that? I know I love the smell of a Christmas tree at Christmas or a wreath or something like that, but I never knew that those very oils that are producing those smells are good for me, right? So just getting outside, seeing the sun produces vitamin D. That's an immune system regulator. That's so important. And the vast number of people are deficient in vitamin D. Just being in the sun, I've heard it's 20 minutes a day is enough. Getting outside, seeing the sun, smelling the flowers. These are not just idle activities that make us feel good for a moment. They actually have positive impact on our health, on our brains, and we need to drink those things in. Do restorative activities. What restores you the most? I was at a workshop I was giving a few weeks ago, and the leader who was there, it was she and her team, and she said, well, what I really love is I love cooking and I love gardening. I'm like, well, by all means, open a garden shop that has a restaurant. That's hey, I'll come there. So what restores you? What do you love doing? Making time for that, stepping aside from all the duty and making time for that, prioritizing that, putting some times for that on your schedule, either weekly, monthly, daily. And it doesn't have to be a long time, but just something to look forward to, that restorative activity. And a joy-filled activity too. What brings you joy? What do you love? For my wife and I, it's bird. We love bird watching. We love looking at the birds. We love looking at the flowers. We love walking in nature. That brings us joy. And also things that improve our health. That brings us joy too. And cooking good foods and physical rest. Most people do not get enough rest. And I've heard various reports. I'm not a doctor, so none of this is I'm not claiming that this is exactly what you need to do. I'm not prescribing this, but these are general things that I've heard from others and that I find to work myself. But rest, it's been said that we need between 7 and 9 hours of rest a night. Sleeping in a dark room, sleeping in a cool room, and just getting the rest that we need, trying to get that rest. And naps are good. I've heard that naps are good too. I like them when I can get them, and they can be very restorative. But getting that physical rest, because our bodies need it, our brains need it. They detoxify, they rejuvenate, they're doing their thing, and we don't understand all the mysteries of it, but we know that they need it. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the more spiritual side of brains do well when they're scanned, those SPECT scans I was talking about that Dr. Amen invented, when he does those SPECT scans, those brains are much healthier, much less worried. The worry centers, you can see a decrease in activity, and the good centers where good thoughts happen, you can see those increasing in the brain when they're in a state of prayer, when they're in a state of meditation, thinking on good thoughts, thinking on spiritual realities from Scripture or from other people who have brought good thinking beyond this normal hurry, worry, busy world that we live in, beyond our five senses. They brought these truths, and there's many wonderful writings on this. So meditating on that. Spending time in that, and even things like doing yoga, like exercising our bodies while we're thinking on good things, or Tai Chi. And I just learned today that even driving puts us in a hypnotic state. Now, crosstown traffic is not the way to do it, but if you're if you've ever been on a long drive and you're just in a good place there, and sometimes I think some of my best thoughts driving. When my wife and I were dating and engaged, we lived in about 3 hours from each other, and we would travel back and forth on the weekends. And I did some of my best thinking. I put together programs. I put together talks. And it's just like I could think more clearly. And I just found out today, well, that's because I'm in a partially hypnotic state. I'm obviously awake, but I would drive through towns and not even remember having driven through the towns. I just knew that I did, and that I didn't wreck the car, and that I was okay. I'm awake, I'm alert, but my brain was able to think. So having that kind of time, just finding the things that renew us. There are many, and we call them disciplines, and nobody likes the word discipline. They think of it as punishment, and that's not what it means. It just means to learn and to be a disciple, a learner. And so many of these traditions that have been brought down to us, they were for a good reason. People, the old ways were the old ways for a reason, and it pays to know what those are and to enter into those things and to create space for those in our lives. So thank you for joining me. I hope that these tips that I've been giving you today and some ideas have stimulated something in you, and that you'll take one of these away or more of them away and begin to practice them, because right now what we need, there's a lot of unrest in this world. A lot of unrest, and what we need is to bring in all the rest we can get. If everybody in the world would stop and enter into rest and some peace with each other, it would really help. I'll close with this. I remember an old Calvin and Hobbes cartoon, and Calvin and Hobbes, if you remember that cartoon strip, they were setting out under this big, beautiful black velvet sky filled with stars one night. And Hobbes said to Calvin, I bet that if more people did this on a regular basis, we would live our lives a lot differently. We would see how small we are and how important we are and how important other people are. And we would live our lives differently if we took that's a type of rest too, if we took that type of restorative, contemplative rest. So I hope these ideas have helped you. Thank you very much for jumping on here with me today. And I hope that you are blessed and well and safe. And until next time, God bless you.